Sure, welcome. So you're hearing a fair amount of agreement from the Finance Committee here. First of all, I think there's agreement that we recognize that America's been very generous in opening up our markets. Our trading partners have taken advantage of us. We don't have fair trade. But I think you're also hearing that our constituents rely on trade, and they're going to be harmed by it. So I handed you 10 case studies, and by the way, for the 10 that were willing to go public, probably got another 50 that were concerned if they went public that they may not get the exclusions. Now, I'm somewhat disappointed to hear that exclusions of some of these things are being ruled out at this point in time. They're very specific situations that I think you ought to consider exclusions for, because I don't often agree with the members on the other side of the aisle, but in many cases here today, particularly when they're expressing concern about small businesses in their states, I'm hoping and I hope you and the president are very sensitive about companies potentially going bankrupt by these actions. Again, we want fair trade, but I hope you recognize, tariffs are double-edged sword. I would argue a somewhat blunt instrument. A question I have for you: there's no doubt that we have offshored some very crucial products, pharmaceuticals, high-end semiconductors, rare earth minerals. Do you have a list of what those products are that we must, in some way, shape, or form, reshore?
Thank you, Senator, and I appreciate the communication we've had, and I've received your letters, and we'll take a close look at those to make sure we're incorporating feedback as we develop the policy. You'll note in the action we took last week, there were certain sectors that we excluded from the tariff action because we think they need their own investigation and consideration, whether it comes to tariffs or other actions. This includes semiconductors, it includes pharmaceuticals, like you're talking about, certain metals like copper, and also critical minerals. These are areas where we have to reshore. We need to be able to think about the best way to incentivize this. There are things we can do as the executive branch, and there are things that Congress can do, and especially with the tax bill coming up. I think these are the kinds of things where we need to create the right incentives.
You're not using tariffs with pharmaceuticals and semiconductors or rare earth minerals.
So right now they're not subject to a tariff.
Because you want them brought in here because they're crucial. There are other products that are also crucial that you are applying tariffs to.
So we are doing investigations right now, and we're considering, with respect to pharmaceuticals and semiconductors, the president's been very clear about this. He said it several times, because tariffs are a tool that can be used to create incentives. What we can't have is the status quo. The status quo has not worked.
Do you believe a trade deficit is just per se always bad?
I think that the situation, what we have, Senator, is a large and persistent trade deficit. In normal economic structures and normal markets, you would have a deficit one year or a surplus one year. But what we have is a structural, persistent and growing deficit.
And as a result, offshore some crucial products.
That's a big part of it. Yes,
but
sir.
Do you want to onshore, for example, very high labor content products when, by the way, we're pretty low unemployment rate? I mean, when I went to college, 5% was full employment. We're at 4.2. I've been in manufacturing since late 70s. You couldn't hire enough people in manufacturing back then. Situations even got worse. So I would argue that I'm far more concerned about our budget deficit of $2 trillion. And I realize the trade deficit, we have problems with that. But I think our bigger problem is we don't have enough workers. So are you factoring that into your calculation in terms of what you're actually trying to accomplish here? I mean, all for bringing back these crucial products so that we don't have national security issues with the things that we can't manufacture. But again, I don't want to bring back high labor content. Now I want to diversify our supply chain. It's bad to have that all in China, as we saw certainly with PPE, but a diversified supply chain around the world, because I think trade is a win-win situation. It should be. What are your comments on that?
So I think when it comes to workers, so first of all, we have about 2 million discouraged workers right? And these are folks who should come off the sidelines for sure. I think the factories that are being built and will be built in the United States will leverage both automation and workers, right? I don't think we're going to have lots of, it's not the kind of labor that's done in some of these other countries. I think our folks are innovative, and the newest factories use a lot of automation, but also workers and people who make the products that the industrial robots that contribute to that automation. But I mean, I think we need to be in a situation where we have production here, right? We need to think not just in terms of quarterly earnings, but in the next century, and how do we set up the American economy now? How do we deal with the emergency now to make sure we can produce far into the future?
Again, I would ask that these case studies be entered in the record, and I just really ask you and the President, focus on the products we actually need as opposed to using this broad instrument. There's going to be an awful lot of collateral damage. People are already feeling that pain, so I hope you're sensitive to that. Thank you.
Without objection, and Senator Tillis is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ambassador Greer, thank you for being here. Back in the 90s, I was in management consulting